What happens when a dragon betrays its heritage, goes against its parent? What happens when a dragon defies the gods? These are the FateBreakers. What's up, everybody? It is Dragon Week. This is a yearly collaboration put together by Ginny D and Pointy Hat. Each year they choose a different monster, and this year they went with dragons. So all week you're going to be getting a lot of, as Ginny D coined it, content, which is objectively hilarious. So when I got invited to participate, and by invited, I mean snuck in the back door of the Discord. Shouts out Nigovi. Probably the best new dungeon tuber to pop off in the last 12 months. I would know, I watch all of them. I started to think about what my take on this would be. Now all week you're gonna be getting amazing videos about lore and running them in combat, the different dragons through the different editions, how to make more of them in your game. But I, at my core, am a narrative homebrewer. So it became pretty apparent pretty early on that I was gonna make a new kind of dragon. And that's when I realized the issue. As not only the most iconic monster in Dungeons & Dragons, but probably the most iconic monster of all time, they've been done a bunch. I mean, every kind of flying lizard that you can think of has probably already been thought about, especially in D&D. The base dragons are divided into metallic and chromatic, and there are a few official of each. And unofficially, everything else has been taken care of. Every color, every kind of metal, every gemstone, every element. I'm not lying when I tell you I started looking through the history of the Pokemon games just to come to the conclusion that yeah, Ruby and Sapphire dragons have been handled. So as I was stuck, I figured I would use this video as an opportunity to walk you through my process. I can go through the techniques I use when I'm trying to come up with an original idea. I can take you through how I approach things like this. Okay, so when coming up with something new, there's a saying a lot of people have liked to use in the past that I personally hate. And that's think outside the box. This is kind of useless verbal nonsense. If your problem lies within certain parameters and the advice is to think outside of those parameters, that is literally the infinity of everything. Original thoughts don't just pop into your head, at least not in my experience. Parameters are what lead us to new discoveries. Most of the time when I come up with something that I like, it is because I challenged the existing parameters. I don't think outside of the box. I attack it. I'll go through whatever it is I'm looking at from top to bottom and assess every aspect of it to see if there are any continual assumptions that everyone seems to be making that can be unassumed. New answers come from new problems, and finding the new problem means you have to question what everyone else is already accepting. So let's do that with the D&D dragons. So first, I just went through in my head what I knew were defined about dragons in D&D. Usually four-legged, wings, sentient, highly intelligent creatures. Now from there, they are differentiated, beginning by dividing them into two categories, at least in the base canon, chromatic and metallic. Now, like I said before, every color has been done and every metal has been thought of already. So where does this division come from? Well, it's lineage. Chromatic dragons are assumed to be more evil in nature and spawn originally from Tiamat, where metallic dragons tend to be more neutral or good and spawn from Bahamut. And this started to bring up a lot of questions. See, I run a lot of homebrew, not a lot of published material, and I haven't dived very deeply into the dragon lore as far as WotC is concerned. But the assumption is that these dragons stay within their designated alignments as well as their beliefs. But the assumption is that they are also very intelligent creatures with free will. And that was where I got my question. Do all chromatic dragons inherently follow and worship Tiamat? And do all metallic dragons inherently follow and worship Bahamut? If so, why? And what happens if they don't? That was the new kind of dragon I was going to make. That was the narrative homebrew that really excited me, that I wanted to break down. Those were FateBreakers. Now, I could just give you a stat block here and now, but that's not any fun. And I don't really want to do that. I don't want to define these as a specific creature. I mostly just want to plant the idea in your head. But I will go through a few things with a few examples to show you my thought process and how I would go about tackling actually statting one of these things out and justifying its existence. See, that's important to me. Starting with the narrative not only informs the stats, but just makes the whole thing a lot more interesting for you to run and for your players. So that's the first thing we have to figure out. Why would a dragon of a certain type backslide in its convictions? What could happen that was so significant that would completely change the beliefs that seemingly are inherent to its existence, woven into its DNA? From a character perspective, someone that is evil that turns good? My first assumption would be love. What if a chromatic dragon fell in love with a metallic dragon? Okay, so what if a red dragon fell in love with, I don't know, a silver dragon? Are the dragons in your world capable of falling in love? I don't know. They are in mine now. Okay, so he has fallen in love, but is that enough to change his beliefs? Not quite. But what if that love was taken from him? And what if it was taken from him by other chromatic dragon? So, red dragon falls in love with a silver dragon. Other chromatic dragons find out and kill the silver dragon. And now this red dragon, in hopes of maybe one day seeing their love again, falls into the worship of Bahamut. Okay, pretty simple, straightforward, but interesting storyline that could create a very memorable NPC or enemy, one that your players might be interested in learning more about. So let's use this and come up with a few things that will help guide us put the features of this creature together. If I were going to stat this out, this is how I'd do it. Okay, the first most iconic thing about the dragon in general is its breath weapon, so let's look at that. And obviously, the red dragon has a fire breath weapon. Now let's assume that all of this dragon's features and abilities are in some way derived from its lineage and from its beliefs. So let's say that this fire was granted to red dragons by Tiamat. So if this red dragon turns its back, well, that fire is taken away. And when you put out a fire, you get smoke. I would give this thing a smoke breath, but not any kind of smoke. See, we've left Tiamat behind, but now we are finding Bahamut. This thought process is what led me to Blasphemer's blindness. The Holy Unseeing. This breath weapon releases a cloud of smoke into a 60-foot radius, and this smoke acts as magical darkness, but a more intense kind. See, the only way to see through any of this smoke is with some sort of radiant effect. Characters that have had Bless cast on them. Weapons that emit a radiant light. Characters without some sort of holy assistance are considered blinded and have to make a wisdom saving throw or be considered frightened. And that way we can roll the frightening presence of the red dragon in as well. See, I would theme this creature around redemption or potentially martyrdom. I would say that this dragon now emits a holy aura. Now any allies within 30 feet of it are immune to being frightened or charmed. All right, now let's go in the other direction. Let's take a metallic dragon and have them break bad. Now what could cause that? What could cause such a holy creature to completely change its viewpoints? Abandon everything that it had believed in? And I think the answer to that is pride. And the one that comes to mind is the gold dragon, the strongest of the metallic dragons, and according to official D&D lore, were considered the apex of the draconic race, dedicated foes of injustice, evil, corruption. What would affect this creature the most? What would affect this prideful, righteous creature to the point of changing everything about it? Well, being wrong. What if a gold dragon took all of those convictions, did something that it thought was right, something it was convinced it was justified to do, and then found out that it was wrong? So wrong that it was shamed by Bahamut himself. This fall from grace, pushing it to the other side, and where its status and pride had all been ripped away and the love it felt from Bahamut retracted, where did it find its solace? What if Tiamat was there to pick up the pieces? I like to think of this one as much more of a physical change, a deterioration, a necrosis attacking this dragon from inside. I would now describe it with these veins of necrotic rot that constantly spread and attack this dragon like a cancer, but they're also the source of its new powers. This is the influence of Tiamat inside of a body that is actively rejecting it. Okay, so the gold dragon also has a fire breath, but in addition, it has a weakening breath. It exhales a gas in a 60-foot cone. And what would happen to that gas if it was also corrupted? What if instead of imposing a weakness on its enemies, it imposed madness? Every character had to make a wisdom saving throw or go into a fugue state of confusion and anger, one that had them questioning all of their beliefs, twisting their own memories and thoughts, forcing them into a bloodlust. These are just a few examples of all of the things you can do with this concept, and obviously build the stat blocks accordingly. I would impose some weaknesses upon the gold dragon, lower its con score and its hit points, require it to constantly keep healers and clerics around it as it consistently fights this disease eating it away from the inside. I would have the red dragon constantly hunted by other chromatic dragons, or maybe sought after by followers of Tiamat, constantly seen as this abomination. So there you go, just a couple ideas, not only a few new different takes, but interesting stories to weave into the world for your players to discover that come with their own potential questions of morality. I hope you guys enjoyed this. I really liked doing this video. It was super cool to be invited and to be a part of it. If I am, I might be a little bit late. That's okay. I had like a stroke and then worked like 80 hours this week, so it's a whole thing. If you like homebrew stuff like this, subscribe, stick around. We're always talking D&D strategies and DM tips. Follow me on TikTok. I got a bunch of homebrewed items over there. And shouts out to Jenny D and Pointy Hat and everybody else in these incredible playlists. This has been one of the coolest Discords to absolutely lurk in and never say a word. Because some of these people are my fucking heroes. All right.